Hello again, friends. This next story is a request by Rally Cheetah. Oh, and before I forget, I was wondering if any of you have heard of Goblin's Den. You can find them on Instagram and Facebook. They find all sorts of lost fae folk and find them good homes. If you are someone who loves spirits, like me, or dragons, or pixies, or whatever, maybe you could adopt one of my lost little brethren through Goblin's Den. This is not a paid advertisement. I just really like them. I started to do some research into this next story, and I found this fascinating. So, this story was first published in 1898 as number 23 of Hasegawa Takehiro's Japanese fairy tale series. Later, it was included in Hearn's Japanese fairy tales, with some tiny changes, like the end of the story, but not by much. The story is said to be from the 15th century, when it was known as The Picture Cats and the Rat. Hearn called it The Artist of Cats. This story is believed to have been inspired by Sessue Toyo, a Zen monk and painter. Here are some of his works of art. So beautiful. His style of painting inspired succeeding Japanese artists and were widely used in the 16th century. So join me now as we discover The Boy Who Drew Cats by Hasegawa Takehiro. I hope. A long, long time ago, in a small country village in Japan, there lived a poor farmer and his wife who were very good people. They had a number of children and found it very hard to feed them all. Yeah, that can happen. Children eat a lot. Have you ever tried to feed a teenager? The elder son was strong enough, when only 14 years old, to help his father, and the little girls learned to help their mother almost as soon as they could walk. But the youngest child, a little boy, did not seem to be fit for hard work. He was very clever, cleverer than all his brothers and sisters, but he was quite weak and small, and some people said he would never grow very big, so his parents thought it would be better for him to become a priest than to become a farmer. Well, look at that! Caring parents that look to the needs of their individual children. They are very good people. They took him with them to the village temple one day and asked the good old priest who lived there if he would have their little boy for his acolyte and teach him all that a priest ought to know. So in the olden days, it was not uncommon to apprentice your children to various professionals so they could learn a trade. It's unpaid, but the child gets room and board while they learn. Once the child would pass some sort of test to see if they had enough to ply the trade themselves, the person who taught them would often give them a gift to start out life with. I suppose there are worse ways to educate your children. The old man spoke kindly to the lad and asked him some hard questions. So clever were the answers that the priest agreed to take the little fellow into the temple as an acolyte and to educate him for the priesthood. The boy learned quickly what the old priest taught him, and was very obedient in most things. But he had one fault. He liked to draw cats during study hours, and to draw cats even where cats ought not to have been drawn at all. Isn't that just like a cat showing up where you least expect it? Whenever he found himself alone, he drew cats. He drew them on the margins of the priest's books, and on all the screens of the temple, and on the walls, and on the pillars. Several times the priest told him this was not right, but he did not stop drawing cats. He drew them because he could not really help it. He had what is called the genius of an artist, and just for that reason he was not quite fit to be an acolyte. A good acolyte should study books. I disagree. Many wonderful books have art in them. He could still be a good acolyte. One day, after he had drawn some very clever pictures of cats upon a paper screen, the old priest said to him severely, "My boy, you must go away from the temple at once." clearly not a cat person. "You will never make a good priest, but perhaps you will become a great artist. Now let me give you a last piece of advice, and be sure you never forget it. Avoid large places at night. Keep to small." The boy did not know what the priest meant by saying, "Avoid large places, keep to small." He thought and thought while he was tying up his little bundle of clothes to go away. But he could not understand those words, and he was afraid to speak to the priest any more, except to say goodbye.
Goodbye now. Goodbye. Goodbye. Thank you. Goodbye.
He left the temple very sorrowfully and began to wonder what he should do. If he went straight home, he felt sure his father would punish him for having been disobedient to the priest. So he was afraid to go home. All at once he remembered that the next village, 12 miles away, there was a very big temple. He had heard there were several priests at the temple, and he made up his mind to go to them and ask them to take him for their acolyte. Ah, problem solver, who didn't wait for a mysterious old person to point him in the right direction. I like this kid. Now that big temple was closed up, but the boy did not know this fact. The reason it had been closed up was that a goblin had frightened the priests away and had taken possession of the place. Some brave warriors had afterwards gone to the temple at night to kill the goblin, but they had never been seen alive again. Nobody had ever told these things to the boy, so he walked all the way to the village, hoping to be kindly treated by the priests. When he got to the village, it was already dark, and all the people were in bed. But he saw the big temple on the hill at the other end of the principal street, and he saw there was a light in the temple. People who tell the story say the goblin used to make that light in order to tempt lonely travelers to ask for shelter. And nobody put up a "Beware, temple taken over by goblins, do not enter" sign. Seems that might slow the tide of dead travelers. The boy went at once to the temple and knocked. There was no sound inside. He knocked and he knocked again, but still nobody came. At last he pushed gently at the door and was quite glad to find that it had not been fastened. So he went in and saw a lamp burning, but no priest. He thought some priest would be sure to come very soon, and he sat down and waited. Very polite of him. Then he noticed that everything in the temple was gray with dust and thickly spun over with cobwebs. That's suspicious. It's here that the music would turn ominous. So he thought to himself the priest would certainly like to have an acolyte to keep the place clean. He wondered why they had allowed everything to get so dusty. Right, that's it. It's not suspicious, it's just the maid's day off. Or something. What pleased him, however, were some big white screens, good to paint cats upon. Though he was tired, he looked at once for a writing box and found one, and ground some ink and began to paint cats.
This is an 18 by 24 canvas. This is a double primed pre-stretched canvas, and I've covered it with a nice thin even coat of the liquid white, which makes it wet, makes it slick. It allows us to actually blend color right here on the canvas. So we have that ready, so let's get together and let's do a fantastic painting.
He painted a great many cats upon the screen, and then he began to feel very, very sleepy. He was just on the point of lying down to sleep beside one of the screens when he suddenly remembered the words, "Avoid large places, keep to small." The temple was very large, and he was all alone. And as he thought of these words, though he could not quite understand them, he began to feel for the first time a little afraid, and he resolved to look for a small place in which to sleep. He found a little cabinet with a sliding door, and went into it and shut himself up. Then he lay down and fell fast asleep. I think I've been at that hotel. Very late in the night, he was awakened by the most terrible noise, a noise of fighting and screaming. It was so dreadful that he was afraid even to look through a chink of the little cabinet. He lay very still, holding his breath for fright. Yep, I have definitely been to that hotel. The light that had been in the temple went out, but the awful sounds continued, and became more awful, and all the temple shook. After a long time, silence came. But the boy was still afraid to move. He did not move until the light of the morning sun shone into the cabinet through the chinks of the little door. Then he got out of his hiding place very cautiously and looked about. The first thing he saw was that all the floor of the temple was covered with blood. And then he saw, lying dead in the middle of it, an enormous, monstrous rat.
Rodents of unusual size? I don't think they exist.
A goblin rat, bigger than a cow. That would be a very big rat. But who or what could have killed it? There was no man or other creature to be seen. Suddenly, the boy observed that the mouths of all the cats he had drawn the night before were red and wet with blood. Then he knew that the goblin had been killed by the cats which he had drawn. And then also, for the first time, he understood why the wise old priest had said to him, "Avoid large places at night, keep to small." Afterward, that boy was allowed to stay at the temple as an acolyte and grew to become the abbot, although he never lost his love of painting. Some of the cats which he drew are still shown to travelers in Japan. Aw, that's sweet. I mean, a bit confusing, but still sweet. I also like to draw cats. And here is a cat drawn by the cameraman. The cameraman is so talented. Well, we have reached the time when I ask for your help to grow my tiny channel. The first way is to hit that like thumbs up and leave a comment so I can show the algorithm that we have an engaged audience. The second is to share this video with people who also might find it amusing, perhaps another lover of fairy tales. There is also the notification bell in case no one ever told you about it. I would like to thank Pixabay.com for all the wonderful music and videos and vectors and images and sound effects, and for being an overall great website. If you would like to join my Patreon channel and don't feel like you can part with any pennies, don't worry. My moral supporters are free and can still participate in polls and conversations. Our most recent poll has proved that Christopher Reeve was the best Superman and that people like frogs. I also have Facebook and Instagram, if you're interested. But most of all, I would like to thank you, my dear friends, for being here with me, for passing the time and listening to my stories. I cannot thank you enough. And now for a special thank you to my Patreon friends.